Top Bed Talk.
Yes, so hello, my name's Sam Leggett. I am the Senior Study Coordinator of the Wesfit trial at UHS, so thank you for inviting me here for what we feel is quite an important topic. So firstly, as we know, patients with physiological and psychological resilience are better prepared to withstand the challenges of surgery, and it has been said that prehab should be considered an integral part of the perioperative care pathway. And sort of just echoing what June Davis said earlier in a talk, is that prehab could help address some of the NHS England long-term plans in terms of personalised care, early diagnosis and maximising value. So even though prehab studies have been shown to be positive, currently there is no definitive evidence for this, and that is due to the heterogeneity of the cohorts, and that's where hopefully this study could be of help. So Wesfit, I won't go much into detail because Professor Sandy Jack spoke about this earlier, but it's essentially a randomised control trial powered to deliver 1,560 patients to determine the effects of multi-modal prehab prior to major intracavity cancer surgery. And we are looking at exercise training and psychological support. When Wesfit first opened in April 2018, we did struggle a bit with our recruitment. There were barriers that we didn't realise to expect, and that actually helped us set our aims. So as part of our ongoing investigation into the feasibility of implementing a trial such as Wesfit into a clinical service, we set out to map the current surgical cancer pathways and to trial an earlier referral process. So to do this, we did a 9-month single-centre process evaluation at the sponsor site of University Hospital Southampton, and we looked at colorectal and urology cancer cohorts. So we just did straight-to-surgery patients, so our data set has excluded those on a neoadjuvant cancer pathway. This involved some additional data collection to our screening logs. So we looked at the date referred to the MDT, the date the decision was made for surgery, and then the date of communication with the patient of that decision, which for the majority of patients occurred at an outpatient appointment. So if we look at sort of initial results, our principal barrier to recruitment was an inadequate time to undertake prehab, as we needed a minimum time of 2 weeks. So as you can see from that table, for both colorectal and urology patients, over 30% of people we were unable to approach because of that time. And this impacted our average recruitment, as you can see, only 1.7 patients per calendar month was being recruited. So then we set out to map the pathway. So the y-axis is the days from referral, and the x-axis is looking at the point on the cancer pathway. So date referred to the MDT is defined as day 0, and then we mapped the decision for surgery, the outpatient appointment to discuss surgery or that communication, and then the date of the surgery, with the black line on the graph representing the median of the data points. So for urology cancer patients, it's from referral to decision, a median of 36 days. That leaves from decision to surgery a median of 25 days. However, making that decision to communicating that with the patient was a median of 6.5 days. So that only left 18.5 days to deliver prehabilitation from that communication. A similar observation was observed in our colorectal cancer patients. So again, looking at the black line representing the median. From referral to decision was a median of 33 days, leaving 25 days on median to surgery. But again, that decision to communication was a median of 6 days, leaving only 19 days to deliver prehab. So from this, we went back to our clinical teams at UHS and discussed if there was any ways we could sort of streamline the pathway. And what we came up with was trialling an earlier referral process. So at UHS, the original CPET referral would occur after the outpatient appointment. So that would be the first physiological staging of the patient, would be after they've seen the surgeon. We brought that forward. So while investigations were ongoing, the CPET was considered part of that investigation. So for our colorectal cancer patients, this would occur, we'd get referrals from colonoscopy. So when the endoscopist would look down and see potentially what they identified as a cancer, they would refer to the prehab and the CPET to get that physiological assessment done. By initiating this cardiopulmonary exercise testing prior to the MDT decision, we facilitated patient staging in parallel with tumour staging. So going with sort of the redesigning the pathway that Professor Grocott brought up earlier on that slide, we were sort of trialling that at our site. And as well as a clinical aspect, it also helped with the patient aspect in that it enabled shared decision-making at the outpatient appointment. So as well as having an impact clinically and with the patient, it also helped with our research and that had impacted positively with our trial recruitment. So there were still some patients where we couldn't get because of that time, but the percentages were halved in terms of that ineligibility, and our recruitment increased almost threefold. So we were recruiting 4.75 patients per calendar month. So to conclude, I'm going to echo sort of what Andy mentioned in his abstract just now and what Professor Leggett mentioned earlier, is that we urge all interested sites to start accurately mapping their clinical cancer pathways now in anticipation of a prehab service or a prehab trial, and you should do this per tumour cohort. And we've shown that our early referral to prehab results in increased time available for rehabilitation, so increasing the time for optimisation and preparing the patient. A better informed MDT process, as you'll have patient staging in parallel with tumour staging, and from a patient perspective, more opportunity for shared decision-making. Streamlining these pathways with the aims of the NHS long-term plan appears feasible and it's an effective solution. And our findings do suggest there is potential to deliver prehabilitation within that current 62-day target pathway. Wesfit didn't cause any delays or breaches. We just looked at a way we could streamline the pathway and the earlier referral process seemed to work. We're also looking, because there is an opportunity to accelerate that patient communication, which would give you another 6 or 6.5 days with the patient for optimisation, but there is more work to go on there. And these are my acknowledgements. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. I'm going to leave you with the microphone.
Yeah.
We've got 2 questions on Slido, and then I've got a question if we've got time. With so many issues of recruiting patients to prehab trials, does this not suggest possible difficulties in rolling out such programs in the real world?
So that's a very good question. So sort of the route I'm going to take anyway, I want to become an implementation scientist, so this study sort of works nicely for me. I think you have to do a lot of the groundwork before you start the trial. So when we rolled out, we didn't realise the sort of complexities of that pathway, which is why we looked at the 62-day pathway. And there is scope, there is time available within that pathway, so it's just about streamlining it with your clinical team as a way to optimise it.
And the next question sort of leads on from that. Everybody in this audience is interested in prehab and prehab trials. With all the growing evidence, does it not suggest perhaps that we should be delaying the pathways to fit in prehab?
That's a tricky and contentious issue, I would say. I think there could be some cases, without putting the patient's best interest first. So there might be, in some cases, it could be beneficial, but I'm going to sit on the fence and say I can't answer that, because I do think it's probably a patient interest decision to focus on the patient first.
And I think we shall have time for one more question. If you're performing CPX prior to a formal diagnosis, does this not provoke undue worry in the patients?
No, so we haven't had that. I work quite closely with our clinical CPAC team led by Professor Jenny Leggett, and it's how you coach it, well not coach it, but say it to the patient. So our CNSs at UHS explain it's part of their investigation, so they're aware they're going to have a CT and a CPAC, so they just see it as part of their standard investigation, as it will help the clinical team know more about them.
Excellent, thank you very much.
Top Med Talk.
Thanks for downloading Top Med Talk. Don't forget to subscribe via your podcatcher. Don't forget to check us out on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn and YouTube. And also, don't forget, Top Med Talk is the broadcasting arm of EBPOM, Evidence-Based Perioperative Medicine. We'd love you to find out more about that. If you check out ebpom.org, you can find low prices on some of the conferences we're organising around the world. Many of them are virtual and don't even involve you leaving your own home. Check out ebpom.org now.